What's up, everybody? You are tuned in to the Elks Call with the Elks Herd. My name is Scout, aka the rep from Section X.
And I'm Catherine, aka Do You Even Elks?
And today we have a very special guest for you, the former Double E Director of Marketing and Media Relations and the current Director of the Double E Alumni. Ladies and gentlemen, it is the Dave Jamieson. Dave,
Guys, it's I've been watching your stuff for a while, and it's really cool to be here. And I just wish I'd worn a hat. I didn't realize I'd lost that much hair, so I'm pretty excited.
that's okay. I'm well on my way as well, Dave.
Oh, okay. Well, I mean, hey, I'm probably 9 times your age, so I'm that's good. I probably earned this, but it's great to see you guys.
Hey, thank you so much for joining us today. We have an extremely loaded show here, and you are like the perfect guest to have on the show today.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you.
So today we're going to give you the rundown here on today's show. This week, the Edmonton Elks are taking on the Hamilton Tiger Cats tomorrow, 5:30 p.m. We're going to talk a little bit about that, but first we're going to talk about that last game against the Winnipeg Blue Bombers here at home. Number 22 now, right? Number 22.
I believe so.
On the home loss
I
record.
believe so. That sounds about right.
We're getting into some good territory there. And then we're also going to open up the fan forum for, a couple of the changes that have happened over the last week. I think we know the big obvious one there, Dave. That's going to be a big topic. And we got a couple others. Then we're going to give you the Edmonton sports update. And then we're going to give you a bit more information about Dave Jamieson in The More You Didn't Know.
Okay. Oh, I like this.
We got to call it that.
Yeah.
For copyright.
Yeah, trademarks and all of that. So, Catherine, let's dig into it. Let's talk about that last game.
Let's talk about the last game, which was against the Winnipeg Bombers. Oh, I said Winnipeg right this time. I usually mess that up.
Wins.
little wins every time.
Yeah.
So going into the first quarter, we did see Trey Ford getting the start. I think everybody was super excited about that. Everybody was pumped just to see. I think nobody knew what to expect. We were at the tailgate that day, and everybody that we talked to, everybody always said, like, I don't know. We don't know. We don't know how that's going to go. And it was a super exciting start. I think we were just walking into the stadium when we saw that first touchdown when he threw to Kevin Brown right away at the beginning of the game. So we missed that. But we walked in there pumped. 10 minutes in or so, he also had a nice run for a first down, and then he managed once again to run it in for another touchdown. So, I mean, everybody, I think, was super pumped with those first 10 minutes of the game. Here's when I want to start getting into the conversation. I know that we saw something happening there. I can't remember exactly the timing, but we saw that 3rd and 1. So Trey Ford was on a 3rd and 1, and they decided not to run it.
Yeah, they kicked it away at a 3rd and 1.
Right.
Kicked it away. So now, why would you? I don't know. Wouldn't this be the time to bring in Cornelius, seeing that he's a short yardage guy? The other question that I have is why did we kick it away? Wasn't it close enough for Faithful to maybe get a crack of it and try to kick it?
I think we were a little bit far for Faithful, especially, but the 3rd and 1, Dave. Like, what's your opinion on that?
Oh God. Okay. And I was in football and with Edmonton for 14 years and saw every practice, every game over 14 years. Missed one because of my dad's death. But I always, Don Matthews once said to me, I was working with Don was there in 99 and 2000, and he said, and Don could bring you down. He could shrink you down to like a tiny little human with a couple of words. He said, just because you work in football doesn't mean you know football. I said, okay, thanks, coach. But what I would say to that is sometimes football coaches outsmart themselves, right?
Yeah.
They will overthink a situation. And I mean, here hindsight being, of course, perfect. you would say, well, and look, given the situation the Elks find themselves in, they've got a raw rookie, a Canadian rookie quarterback. Say it again, a Canadian rookie quarterback, not named Nathan Rourke.
Mm-hmm.
Why wouldn't you just do it? And you were off to a great start. Like that first, I don't know, really the first half. Yes, I know Winnipeg started to kind of rise up on its haunches and say, hey, we're the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, and kind of whack, and reassert themselves. But you couldn't have scripted a better start to that game for Edmonton. They were terrific. And so I thought, like, if there's a moment where you just say, screw it, go for it, would have been one of them, right? Just do it. Like, the fans are going to boo?
No, especially after that great start.
Yeah. So I've been around and been, part and been part of scenarios where you think, God, like, and we're early in the game. Like, this isn't being sort of cautious, late in the game and playing the odds, whatever that means now. That was just, to me, it just seemed like, oh, screw it. Let's just do it. What's the worst thing that can happen to us?
And especially when you already went for the 2 point, right?
Mm-hmm.
You went for the 2 point. So you already flexed once. Why not continue with that kind of momentum? Keep flexing. You're on a 3rd and 1 scenario, which is a very standard scenario. But I think you bring up a really good point of coaches overthinking it, right?
Yeah.
Would you say they were playing it safe?
If there's a staff that, whatever the job you think of what Chris Jones and the staff have been doing, that if there's a time and a place in a season, and I know the coaches will always talk about establishing good habits and process and all of those things, and I understand that. I mean, I've watched teams evolve from training camp to, right through to a Grey Cup. And so they're always stressing fundamentals, and this is the way we do it, and and predictability and those sorts of things. And I get why you need all of that. But I always just feel like now, given they're 0-9 and we don't need to retell their story, that now is when you want to just open it up.
Yep.
And let it go. Like, Trey Ford, you want to be a pro quarterback? Okay. We're going to do everything we can to help you. We'll put the best possible protection together based on the personnel we have. And go, young man. Unleash it, and let's see what we got.
Especially too when you're paying Taylor Cornelius starting quarterback wage, and at this point he's QB3. He can lean over and get the first.
He can fall forward, and he's in. Yeah, I know. The other thing, and you guys referenced at the front end of the question, was I understand that there are some challenges or limitations with Faithful. Just his range.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, that concerns me. And I had the luxury or benefit, the team did, of having Sean Fleming for how many years?
Yes.
And I'm sure there was an optimal, range distance where he was money, but I never once heard like, oh, we better get in range for Fleming.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
very true.
It was just like, hey, number 11. What do you got today? We need a 51-yard, and it was done. And that's not like Dean Faithful, who I've interviewed and was utterly charming. And I thought I was talking to someone from Ted Lasso. And it seems like a great dude, and I hope he has great success. But it just like I don't like. I just if you're good enough to play, then you're good enough to be challenged, and you're good enough to be put in tough situations.
Yes.
Yeah.
And if tough situations require you to, nail one from 47, then you got to do it, or we'll get someone else to do it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Push your limits, and that's compete level, right?
Well, and at the end, I think I've mentioned it before. It's also a job, right? He is being paid to perform a job, and just like in any other job, if you're not performing properly, then you got to find a better performer.
Sure.
Yeah,
that is fair.
So it's not a matter of accommodating, but it's like you say, pushing the limits, right? Let's see what you can do, especially in a moment like this that we're ahead. Yeah. Really, we don't have much to lose if kicked it in. If he kicked it in, we would have been 3 points ahead instead
Yeah.
of to
Yeah.
the position that we were at after
Yeah.
that, right? So,
Yeah.
but let's move on. After that, we did go into the second quarter with a lead. That was a nice little surprise. Everybody was super happy.
Yeah.
The defense put pressure on Coleros right there, which caused him to trip. I'm going to say that because I know that he did challenge
Mhm.
it and nothing came out of it, which caused him to throw it right in the hands of Purefoy, which threw it back for a lovely pick six.
Walking turnover himself.
Yeah, that's what he
yes.
calls himself, right?
Yeah.
Walking turnover. He lives up to his name.
A good player, man. He's a really
Very
good player.
much so. AC Leonard, he continues to make good plays,
Mhm.
but it just didn't seem to be enough, just quite there. Winnipeg brought out their backup, Drew Brown, who
Yeah.
definitely showed up to play.
Yeah, he balled
So
out.
we
Yeah.
finished the first half with 22-10. And I think at that point, everybody was still quite hopeful. I think
Mhm.
everybody was still quite excited, and the energy in Commonwealth was very high and very infectious.
Yeah, it was one of the best halves that the Edmonton Elks have played in even really the last 2 years. It
Oh
was
God, yeah. Without question, it may be in fact the best half.
Mhm.
If
Yeah.
we can, I mean, I'm sure we could go back and look at some other games and go, oh, okay, well they were rolling there, but I would agree. I think it was the most cohesive on both sides of the ball. Half of football that I've seen out of this group over a couple of years, and it did give some. But God, this is like one of those old comics where the guy walks out the door and an anvil falls on his head, like he's looking like, oh God, when's it going to hit? And then it lands, and because it was Winnipeg.
Yeah.
Very definitely.
You just, even with Drew Brown, you go, well, these guys do know how to win.
Yeah.
And I was around when I worked there. There were the teams in 02, 03, which 02 won to the Grey Cup here and lost to Montreal. 03 won and just pummeled Montreal. Not the score wasn't a pummeling, but the on field they lit them up in Regina in 03. They won in 04 was a very good team, but they lost in the final or semi, and then 05 won. But that was a team that was aging. But I'm telling you, that 02-03 team of the Eskimos, they remind me a lot of, and I know Winnipeg is on the back end of this group, like they're going to age out here, right? Because this can't keep rolling forever. But they remind me a bit of that 02-03 Eskimo team, where it's just like you go, yeah, we're not our best tonight, but we're going to win.
Mhm.
Why? Because we're better. Just better. And you didn't need to go deep. We're just better, and that's what Winnipeg is, just better.
And I think everybody went into the third quarter feeling that, right? Everybody started getting a little apprehensive because everybody was wondering, when is it that they're going to show up?
Yeah, Winnipeg just decides they're going to flex, and they just flex, and you go, oh, okay, all right, and that's
exactly.
over.
And we
The
all
pedigree. The pedigree, right?
Yes.
And champions pedigree, championship pedigree. It's something that I've talked about quite a bit, especially when we faced Winnipeg. Never count these guys out. And you'd like to think that the backup quarterback coming in is an ideal scenario for the Edmonton Elks. But like you said, unfortunately, they have the pedigree. Their backups know how to ball.
Which is what people used to say about Edmonton.
Mhm.
Yeah.
Where you go, hey, we got them down by 10. Mm-hmm. Oh, look, their backup's in. But our backup is better than your starter.
Yeah.
And I know it's a different time. I understand that. And I understand there's a cap and there's limited, and it's harder to find players to come to Canada and because of the competition. I get all of that. But there was a time when people used to say that about Edmonton. Like, how is that dude your backup?
Yeah.
Because we take him as our starter in a minute. Yeah. And we're like, yeah, well, he's not better than the guy we have.
Yeah.
Well, even looking at the scenario we're in right now and then comparing to, let's say, the Danny Machocha years, right? That's very small stint. Edmonton ran him out of town for things that we're actually witnessing worse than what we witnessed with the Machocha, right?
Yeah.
And so it's like it's not a forgiveness, but we have slipped so far from that spot in
Yeah.
CFL legacy.
It hurts.
It does.
And you guys, you're fans. Ultimately, it's why we're doing this. And
Mhm.
I'm both, a former employee and I'm a season ticket holder. I'm, as you guys mentioned at the top of this, I'm a director for the EE Alumni. I still do work with the Elks. Was working, I'll be helping them with the Wall of Honor celebration for Terry Vaughn
Beautiful.
on August 27th, and so I'm invested, right? And so I can tell you just on a personal level, I don't want to speak for anybody on the Alumni. They're more than capable of, they've got their own voices, and those are the guys who played. They're the ones who matter. I'm the guy who happened to be there and have a roles for 14 years. I'm privileged to have been part of it, but it hurts to see where they're at now.
Yes.
No, and it's great to hear. And I say that not in a negative way, but all of us as fans, I'll speak on behalf of fans just because of what I've seen on Twitter.
Sure.
We all want to see more communication, or we want to see more of a voice. And even like, let's say with Odell and Calvin McCarty, those guys out there right now, speaking up, Eddie Steele, there's a lot of alumni out there, and they're showing their displeasure. But I think especially for somebody like yourself with that history and those connections, I mean, you could be prancing around and preaching that, yeah, everything's okay. But the reality is that there is a legacy, and there is a legacy behind that week.
Well, just to ponder for, just consider this. Next year is the 75th anniversary.
Yeah.
Now, you don't get to dictate the terms of, I mean, I shouldn't, let me rephrase that. I mean, you'd like to coincide with the team doing really, really well, a celebration of all that's come before and all of that. And they'll do that, and they do it really well. But, it's a point in the franchise's history where it gives you a chance, or will give people a chance to reflect on all of the great that has happened there. And there have been some lean years. The 60s were not good. But, there's a lot to unpack of where this franchise is right now. And I know we're going to get to some questions around the news that's happened the last couple of days. But, there's a cautionary tale in there where I was, I arrived in 1998, not to make this about me, but I will for a moment, and we were, I got the job at the Eskimos, and I was obviously excited and proud to be part of it. And our first year, we had, we were not a great team. We were 9-9. David Archer was the quarterback. Kay Stevenson was the head coach. And we just kind of limped through, and we were sort of dragging that Ron Lancaster era. There were a bunch of guys from there that continued on, did a year, and then it was like, okay, we got through that, and that brought on the change. And then we went into our past, got Don Matthews in 99. That didn't go terribly well for a couple of years. And then, but what happened was there was a building, like there was, in 99, we added some free agents, like Terry Vaughn was a big star, and there was it seemed now in reflection, there was a real process to how we got better. And then identify, Jason Moss was an upgrade on Nealon Green and Marcus Crandall. But then that gave way to Ricky Ray. And I know Ricky Ray seems like he was sent from another planet. And at the time, I guess, but, Jason Moss was a damn good quarterback.
Yeah.
Let the record show. But there, and it's just been to watch the last few years here in Edmonton. Yeah, I know there was COVID in there. So, but just the last couple of years, it just doesn't seem like they've answered enough questions about the most important positions on the team, namely quarterback.
Right.
And they're it just can't get traction, man. They just can't get traction. Injuries from key players, big free agent signings, which we can debate. Although I got to tell you, like the last couple of years, I go, Chris Jones won free agency. Like, goes out and gets, which tells me that he's a really good, like, and I believe this about Chris Jones. He can find talent, and he can sell them on what he is offering. That's a skill. That's a real skill.
Yes, but now we got to do something with that talent, right?
No, yeah, no, I'm not. And listen, I'm not giving them a pass or them a pass.
No,
I'm just saying
definitely.
that, because it's real easy to just go. It's all and it is bleak, and you can't.
Yeah.
Again, go back to Don Matthews. He used to say, and like I'm a young PR guy. I'm doing. I'm still green, and Don would go, "We are a record," because I'd be saying, "Oh, we were close or whatever." Some bullshit I was offering him up as a young guy in a conversation. And he'd go, "We are a record."
Yeah.
Get it? Be clear. If you're 2-11, you're 2-11. And you might have lost some close games in there, but you are, until they have another way of measuring what success is, you are your record. So get used to it.
Yep. Yeah. No, that's, I mean, tying it back to the game, it's exactly it, right? I mean, if we're going to be a record, we got to make sure that we're playing and we're improving every single time that we get rid of that record, right? And I know with the third, we started all right going into the third.
Yeah.
We saw, Trey Ford doing his thing. We had a touchdown in there, but in very typical third quarter fashion, things started to go south. And just like Steve Benassi here in the chat, he says the momentum started to shift, right? And we saw it. And the one thing that I started noticing, and this goes back to the talent, right? That sometimes it doesn't matter how talented your team is if you keep making the same mistakes over and over again. We keep seeing the penalties, the defense not stopping the run. We have the O-line, just going and we just see a lot of the over the middle, over the head plays by the O-line. We don't see any adjustments after the half. Right? It's like the Elks are not even trying to figure out the opposition's playbook. It just seems like there's no progress, and that's what's frustrating, especially when you have such talent in the team.
We did get that touchdown, right? We got that to the side to Kyron Moore. He ran it up the side. It was more of an unconventional play rather than what we've seen. I guess Geno Lewis at the beginning of the year kind of scored on something similar, but that was more of a 50-50 ball rather than a guy wide open. But yeah, as far as the defense goes, Winnipeg kind of started to run the Brady Oliveira combo, running us down with that. And then, like you said, over the head, it was, you could almost predict.
See it coming.
Yeah, you could almost predict it. It was getting a little bit frustrating. So lack of adjustments at halftime again, right?
Yeah, it's funny. I've talked to, and I've been in the dressing room at halftime many times. And there is, you do get some time, and I've seen some coaching at halftime. I mean, I've seen, Rich Stubler back in the day pull out a whiteboard and grab, the defense, because it was his area, obviously. But there isn't a lot of time to fundamentally change what you've spent all week preparing. Like you can highlight some things, but in terms of like sweeping tactical changes, you don't have a lot of time. And you by then you've identified tendencies, and they've seen some stuff that maybe they weren't either they hadn't properly prepared for, but there aren't a lot of mysteries. I don't think Winnipeg fooled anybody with how they went about their business. I mean, they were slow to get going, and credit Edmonton. I mean, they were sharp right out of the gate. But then things settle out, and then you see where the soft underbelly gets revealed, and Winnipeg can grind, and then Edmonton ends up defense. They're on the field a long time, long drives, and you start seeing them kind of get on roller skates going backwards. It's tough. Tough.
That run game, right? The run game has been an issue for the Edmonton Elks all season. Right. So it was only a matter of time before Brady Oliveira got started.
Yeah. Yes. And I mean, even with, not to bring it back to Drew Brown, but he did what he was supposed to do and more. He was for a rookie backup. He was absolutely amazing. And unfortunately, it just led us to blow up very comfortable lead. And And that's another thing, right? I mean, with that lead, how do you go from having such a comfortable lead to absolutely blowing it, right? What is it that happens at that point? It could be, we could talk about the penalties, we could talk about the turnovers, we could even talk about the coaching, right? Does Chris Jones have too many jobs, and is he just perhaps not paying attention to some specific things, or they're being overlooked?
It's, I mean, he's one man, and obviously he's very talented. He's one in this league. There are too many hats. There are too many hats. Too much going on. I think at his best he should be a head coach, and if he has to do D coordinator, so be it. He's very skilled in that area. GMing requires a lot of time. When a team is on the field practicing, GMs should be on a phone, or they should be on a plane, and they should be out finding players to either replace what you have or get ready to bring in new talent if necessary. The GM should always be thinking ahead. I mean, you've got to react to what's happened if there are injuries, and you've got to, make roster moves and all that stuff. But it's a lot to ask of one person.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, coaching a pro football team, God, it's just a crushing job. It really is. I've seen really good people, very skilled people, just buckle under the stress of it all. And they had good teams, and they were winning. Like, imagine that. Like, you're winning, and it's still kind of killing you.
Yeah.
Well, workaholics, right? And
sure, yeah, but when you, just when you think, hey, we're on a 5-game winning streak, we should be on easy street. Is when you lose your left tackle, and you're like, holy shit, I gotta and then it's a whole new it's your you win one, and then it's do it again 5-7 days later. And everyone knows the nature of the beast, but it's still, it's a lot to ask Chris Jones to do all of that, do it well, and try and get a team that is, and he's talked about it, and I know he's sick of it, but the losing streak is not all on him, but he wears it.
Yeah, he definitely has to, as the number one representative for the team, realistically, right? It's not. It wasn't Victor for the last while. We'll get to that, but it wasn't Victor. The number one face for the team is Chris Jones. He's the number one person getting lambasted.
Always should be. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
Always
and then game of turnovers.
Well, yeah, that's what it was. And we've said it before. If it's a game of turnovers, it's over. It's not.
You got to win that battle.
You have to win that
battle.
I think we have.
Ever thus. Yeah, ever thus. Yeah.
So, I mean, we ended up 38-29 being the final score. My last thought on that is at least it wasn't 0. There's going to be a positive.
Yes. We didn't get shut out. Jeez, that's a low bar. Man, that is so low.
I think I said that, that our expectations are so low.
Well, and even live listener Steve Benassi, he also said last week his expectation just at least get 1 point.
Yeah, just one, Yeah, Rouge.
If I may, and again, I was part of some not very good teams like 06, 07, Eskimos after the Ricky Ray trade with Stephen Giles, very nice guy. I worked with Steve twice. We weren't good. Let's just call it that. We weren't good, but we still had the capability of entertaining and scoring points.
Yes,
and fans are disappointed by losses, but if they went to the park, they went to Commonwealth, and they were entertained, but came away with a loss, you go, okay, well, I guess as just an entertainment vehicle, okay, well, we, kind of did our job. Sorry about the result, and we'll try and do better next time. But when you get shut out, when you lose as often, and consecutively as they do, it's you fans say, what are you offering me exactly?
Yeah.
That's fair.
And with that entertainment piece, right? It's kind of funny because this last game was very entertaining.
It was great.
Extremely entertaining, but there's still a very large portion of fans
Mhm.
that are still saying, what did you provide me? Because you obviously did not get me a win. And the number one thing that a lot of fans want right now is just a win. Just a win at home, right?
Well, and just to make this whole story go away, like just end the pain.
Yeah.
And it doesn't have to be a great win. It could be a low-scoring game, and Dean Faithful wins it on a walk-off 40-yarder. I don't care. It doesn't matter how it happens. It just has to happen.
Yeah.
And once that happens, I'm not suggesting they're going to go on a run or anything like that, because I don't think they're capable of that right now. But they're not that team. I mean, it's a hell of a lot to ask a team with Trey Ford as your starting quarterback, because, and he showed some really good stuff to pull that off now. But, can they show, and they get some wins, show that there's been some progress in some areas, notably, the development of a quarterback, a quarterback that can win in the CFL, and, and then draw this whole thing to a close.
Yeah. No, and I even heard you on 1260 over the last year talk about that. Like, is winning the only thing that they need right now? Yes, it is.
Yes.
And even if it's an 0-3 win, let's say, like you said, right, Dean Faithful walk off. Let's even add 0 points the whole game, and the only thing we got was the 3 at the end. Fans at home at Commonwealth Stadium would still lose it for that, because we are past the point of entertainment. You could do everything inside the stadium and outside the stadium, right? Yeah. The tailgate is great. We're doing great out there.
Tailgate's fantastic. Yeah.
Right. But then you now have to go watch for the next 2.5 to 3 hours another loss, and that kind of kills that
experience. You still
experience.
Walk away with a sour disposition.
Yeah,
right? You still walk away.
And God bless the tailgate. And I'm sure we'll mention all of what happens outside the stadium. But I know there were people at tailgate and never go inside.
Yeah, totally.
And okay, I understand that's part of tailgating, and that happens elsewhere with really good teams. But that said. God, I wish we weren't talking. I mean, I know why we're talking, and it's good that we are talking, but it's just sort of a swirl around the toilet bowl all the time, just about, the lack of wins, all of the issues around the team and the attendance and everything. It just, for a lot of reasons, it would be nice for it to change the narrative, and the win will be the thing that, at least for a moment, lets everyone breathe. Just breathe for a second,
just for a little bit. Yeah.
Well, and even with last year too, real quick before we go on to the transactions, even with last year, we had away wins. So there's wins happening away, and there was that hope, and like Taylor Cornelius was progressing and everything else. But unfortunately, for some reason, we just never got to the home win. And now we are at the point where everybody is frothing at the mouth for that. So, like, we need it. The best 2 chances are the next 2 games. Obviously, in Hamilton, we just need a season win now, and then we need a home win, and Ottawa at home is going to be the next best chance.
Yeah, so, win one for Terry Vaughn. Let's do that.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, no, we saw your tweet. We retweeted it or reposted it now. Sorry on X.
I don't know what you call it. Reacted it.
Reacted it. Yeah.
All right, injury report.
Yeah. Going to the next game, which is tomorrow. We do have some injuries. We have Elliot Brown on the D line out with a knee injury.
Luchez.
Wow. Okay. Purefoy out with a calf injury, and Josiah St. John, an O-line with a hand injury. So disappointing, of course.
That Purefoy one.
Purefoy. We have
Purefoy. It hurts.
Yeah, it definitely hurts. We did have some transactions. We had some signups. D-line Daniel Ross. We also have Caleb Tanner, a linebacker, and Micaiah Johnson, a running back. So that we'll see. I'm not too sure about those ones, so we'll just move on.
Yeah, depth chart is out, so definitely go check out the depth chart from the Edmonton Elks themselves. We haven't quite scanned it. We do know that Trey Ford is going to be starting, so
as he should.
He earned that one, right?
I would say that he is my player to watch because
Nice.
once again we want to see him continue with this momentum that he has. I mean, he had an amazing game. He had some great plays. Let's just keep going. So I'll definitely be watching him on that. What would be your player to watch?
Oh, without question. I mean, it's straightforward. You
Yeah.
want to see him build off what he did. He's a decidedly different quarterback than Taylor Cornelius, not just in stature, but just just his abilities. Cornelius ran very well for a big man, surprisingly so. But Trey Ford's a different kind of animal. I mean, for those of a certain age who remember Nealon Green, I see some Nealon Green. Now, Nealon Green came out of a major U.S. program, so he was. Got to remember, like Trey Ford, we're talking about homegrown in the truest sense, and it's a it's a big jump to this level. But just in terms stylistically, I look at Trey Ford and I see a bit of Nealon in there. And, Nealon you would love him because he would do stuff. He'd go off and run and did it really well. But then would make curious decisions. Let's call him that with the football in terms of throwing and, where he would, you're like, what did you see on that play? But that's okay. I mean, young quarterbacks you'll love them and then you'll want to, not love them. But Trey Ford is the guy to watch. I mean, and having Geno Lewis back in is going to be great for all concerned, but Trey Ford is the one you want to watch.
Nice. And then for me, I'll go D with it. I'm going to say Niles Morgan. Big reason is for the penalties. If he can keep a clean game, if he can pull off a clean sheet, play that game, play his game, and not rack up massive penalties, because the defense has had an issue with that over the last few games. So really, really hoping that Niles Morgan comes out, balls out, and helps get that win in Hamilton.
Okay.
So, guys, we're done talking about that last game. Let's open up the fan forum. So, this segment's called the Fan Forum, and we're going to talk about some hot topics surrounding the Edmonton Elks, and our live listeners will get to chime in on each topic we discuss. So this is where we're going to scan through that live chat after each question.
Okay.
So everybody make sure you comment in the chat, get it in there, because we're going to be looking. Now, our first topic, it's going to be a very obvious one. We know where this is going. It's about Victor Cui and the Edmonton Elks parting ways. I believe he's had 4 wins during his tenure. So a year and a half, season and a half, 0 home wins, the 4 away wins. He's had quite a bit of employee turnover over in the Edmonton Elks office. And then the alumni. We're hearing mixed stuff from the alumni. Some of them are kind of happy with some of the initiatives he's brought in, but then there's still also alumni that are feeling like they aren't getting enough. Like an alumni today posted about the alumni room and wondering if they're actually going to get full access, which makes sense. It's called alumni room. Your alumni should be using it for their purposes within the game, right? So do you think this was a good move by the board and Victor Cui to part ways?
Yes, I do. And I'm not here to impugn anyone's reputation. I'm not there within the organization, but I know enough people who are, and I've had enough dealings with all of the interested parties in all of this. What I will say is that Victor and I, like a lot of people, were, if not impressed, maybe even blown away by him when he arrived, because he arrived with a flourish and a social media savvy, and certainly a resume that made you sit up and go, wow, okay. And he talked about making the Edmonton Elks not just a local, not even a provincial, but a global brand. And so the vision was big. And I could see how people on the board who are all, lawyers and business leaders and whatever else, that they too, even though they are seasoned professionals, would look at this individual coming in from what he had done in overseas and in Asia and with one championship and go, wow, he is going to take us to a new place. And in fact, there were times when people were like, this guy should be the commissioner of the CFL.
Yeah.
Right. Yeah.
And I mean, you talk about making an entrance. It was an entrance.
Mhm.
But and I, both with the 14 years I worked at the club, and then I did 1 year as president of the Edmonton Rush, which was humbling, but maybe the best education I ever got in sports management, because it taught me that you can clap your hands and say, I will deliver, and I will make a lot of pronouncements, and we will fill the stadium, and we will do this. And the hard reality, selling a ticket to a pro sporting event, and I know to keep the Oilers out of this, there were times when it was hard to sell the Oilers in this town because they weren't good. Doing that is a very hard job, and it requires diligence, it requires patience, and it requires a system, and it requires and I'm sure Victor on a level knew that and knows it. But there was, a year and a half in, the board, and I can't speak for them, they probably went, when's the magic going to kick in? Like, there was lots of, there was a great presence on social media. I get that. But at the end of the day, where are the results? Now, the results are often tied to the on-field product.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think a game presentation under Victor Cuy's leadership is terribly different from what I was involved in. It's modernized because it should be. I mean, there's social media, there's, but at the end of the day, you've got, football into the end zone for high school football. You've got a cheer team that's excellent.
Mm-hmm.
You've got music playing. You've got some timeouts to do some stuff. But there isn't a lot you can do within, again, back to, what we were talking about way long time ago, which was the tailgating. There's a good vibe around that. It'll be even better when the crowds are bigger.
Yeah.
So I heard a lot about a vision. I just didn't see a lot of action on the vision. And you reference, staff turnover, and that's troubling. It speaks to an environment. And again, coupled with a wildly underperforming team, I think the board just said, we got to move here. We gotta get on to a different way of doing it. Now, I don't know what that is, because Victor Cuy was like a shock to the system when he arrived. And I said it on the air when I was at TSN 1260. Wow, this guy, this is a franchise that has fallen on hard times. This is the right guy arriving at the right time. And let's stand back and watch it go.
Yeah, no, and it's very interesting that you say that, because even our friends over at Edmonton Sports Talk,
Mm-hmm.
Dustin Nielsen was saying the exact same thing. So Victor Cuy came on.
Mm-hmm.
He said, "Whoa, guys, what's up? I'm part of the AM Nasty for a day," and he kind of sold his persona and sold his position, right? And got everybody to like him real quick. And that's great. That's great for selling and marketing and everything else. And like you said, the whole global part of it, right? He's trying to make it a global brand, but the people that you need to sell to live in Edmonton.
They're right here.
My question is this, though. So let's say that the team was performing, and we were actually winning games.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think this would have happened too? Or is that just a result of
No, it's a great question. It reframes the dynamic.
Mm-hmm.
Now, losing in professional sports, or in sports, but professional sports, because you're getting paid and there's higher expectations, and there should be. But if you're winning, they say winning a race is a whole bunch of things, right? And it does on a level, but I've been around some really good teams. But, it's a different time. Sometimes I have to check myself that, when I worked there, It's a number of years ago, and the people of 2023, young staffers, they've got a really young, energetic, talented staff at the Elks. I know that because I've seen their work. It's really good. And I'll say this about Victor, and again, I said at the outset, and I'll maintain it now. I don't want to impugn anybody personally, but there was a lot of brand building around Victor, and through social media, through magazine covers, through profiles, through a lot of that stuff. And I'll say now, nobody's ever bought a ticket to a sporting event to watch a president, except maybe Jerry Jones in Dallas. Nobody.
No, and it's a very good point, and I understand using your persona and your likeness to leverage another brand. I mean, we kind of specialize in social media and specialize in marketing and things like that. Like, we know how to do that, but very rarely does it actually translate at the thousands and the millions. Like, let's say Terrell Owens. So he has a wine brand.
Yeah.
His wine brand follows the herd, the Elks herd, and we follow his wine brand back. Now, as if he's ever going to follow us back on his personal or whatever, but this is his brand that he's hawking on the side.
Yeah.
He's not getting thousands of followers. He's not gaining the same traction, right?
No,
and even then, however he markets it on Twitter, it's still not translating to the thousands and results that he's hoping for. So you make an extremely good point, right? A lot of that media and a lot of that stuff that was happening around Victor, unfortunately, it wasn't as productive as maybe it seemed.
Yeah. And I applaud him for doing it. And had the skill and the sensibility and obviously great experience from his what he'd done previously to be able to do that. But it's a cautionary tale, I think, for a lot of people to not place so much importance on what a person's online persona is. But when the lights are off and the cameras are not, and your phone is away, are you able to get the work done necessary to run a professional sports franchise?
Right.
And
Yeah.
a lot of that is non-glamorous work. Like, it ain't fun. And I was there for Hugh Campbell hired me, and I owe him more than I could ever repay him. And I worked with Rick Lawlisher, one of the best bosses I ever had. And he wasn't always fun. But I'll tell you what, man, we got a lot of work done, and a lot of it people never saw. But I can tell you that it required a lot of heavy lifting and a lot of, it's a shame that it's had to come to this, but it's, I think, best for all parties.
Yeah. No, I agree. Even, what Steve said here in the chat, he was asking what was so urgent to let Victor go in the middle of the season. Unfortunately, we don't know that. We can't speak on it. However, if it's middle of the season, your imagination can definitely go wild on that. And then now we're looking for an interim position only to redo
and go out. Which I got to be honest, and I've said it to friends, and I'm curious. It's a curious move. Like, why you need to go outside for interim, and then when that's over, go outside again to find someone to come inside.
Yeah, and they even said that they could go internal with that too. So, I mean, you're not going to go internal to start with the interim, which is the natural, I would assume, internal to interim. That's usually a natural process. But in this case, they're looking outside, and then the permanent position could be internal.
Well, and here's the thing. Like, at this point in the season, God, I hate saying this, the season is lost. Okay, whatever's going to happen on the field is going to happen. But now you're into next year. Now you're having scheduling meetings. You're meeting with the city to talk about, availability and, like, could we play? You're starting to frame up a schedule, and then you really get into it with the league, and they go through so many iterations of schedules. I mean, I've been around where it's like, what version of this are we signing off on?
Yeah.
Like version 17, and because you're not doing it in isolation, and the city, you're a tenant. You know, if Motley Crue decides to come through with yet another farewell tour, well, Motley Crue.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And so it's people always go, well, how hard is it? You just go Thursday, Friday, Saturday, or Sunday now. Well, it's harder than that because, you know, in Commonwealth, you'd like it to be very busy. And some years it's pretty busy. And you know, so the Elks have to work around all of that. And I know what that process can look like. But you're into next year. You're starting to go, okay, what are we, you know, and based on your financials, right? That's going to really dictate what you can do or not do.
Yep.
And so that's why I'm finding curious why you wouldn't slide in, let's say, an Alan Watt, who is, unless I'm missing somebody, is the most experienced sports executive in the city right now, still working in sports.
Correct.
Has been around. Like I replaced Alan, who's a friend of mine, but I came in '98. I think Alan moved to the Oilers in '97. He was part of most of the 5 in a row, if not all of it. I mean, he has seen there isn't anything around a football franchise in the CFL that he doesn't know on some level. You know, why just slide him in and do that? Or Rick Lawlisher, you know, who's retired from the BC Lions, lives here and could very capably, in like, you know, just as long as it took him to drive to the stadium and then slide into that office, you could do the job and get it all done. And, you know, I think there are options, but, you know, nobody asked me, and the board in their wisdom decided this is the way they're going to go. So either they know something we don't, which is obviously the case. I just find it a curious move.
Well, and that kind of takes us to our next question, you know, with the organization losing so much money and not really being sure exactly what direction they're going to take. What is your thoughts on the organization moving away from the community-owned model, and now looking at selling the team to an ownership group or somebody else?
Some new version of whatever that looks like? If it's a singular owner, or if it's a group of investors who come together.
Yes.
Here's my thought. I'll try and be succinct for a change. Community ownership is obviously, I mean, it's how this team started, and it works well in Winnipeg, it works well in Saskatchewan, and largely has worked well here. And that's fine. And I respect history. But they've arrived at a place now, you know, we know why they're here or how they're here, where I think you have to entertain every idea for financial viability and sustainability. And if that is a singular owner, if Elks Herd buys the team and you guys are properly financed, have at it, kids. And you can get clearance by the league and the various, you know, governing bodies. Go for it. If it's a group of individuals, you know, who care about this team and want to see it survive and think it's an asset to our community, go forth. I just don't think that now, given the dire, you know, they were in dire financial straits, that you can be, no, we are dying on the hill of community ownership. Because I'm going to say this, and I maintained it when I was there. We're proud of our community ownership. And we talked about it a lot. You know, in terms of, like, there were great benefits of being community owned and a not-for-profit, which is how they were classified. I believe they still are.
Mm-hmm.
You could buy your advertising and get it at reduced rates and things like that. You got benefits for being a not-for-profit.
Yeah.
And we always, and I remember Hugh Campbell saying, you know, Dave, we don't want to make a lot of money. We just don't want to lose a lot. And I thought, wow, that's a weird way of kind of going about this, but it was true. Just stay out of the red as much as you can, but you don't have to get greedy. And they had the Heritage Fund or Sustainability Fund or whatever you call it. And you knew that the finances were good. And then when you would host a Grey Cup, you'd get a big influx of money and you'd plump the coffers up and off you go. And I'm not being succinct, so I lied at the front end of this question. You've got to entertain that. You have to entertain all of the options. And I maintain that there will be a whole bunch of people walking through the turnstiles at Commonwealth, or they used to be turnstiles, now you get your ticket scanned, that don't know what the ownership situation is.
Yeah.
Are you a good football team? Are you a bad football team? Did I have fun? Did I get value? They don't care about community ownership. It's talked about, in media circles and people like me, and I guess, and we make it seem like it's so important. I think people just don't want the team to be bad.
Yeah.
They don't care if it's,
Yeah.
I own it or you own it or whoever owns it. Just run it well, pay the bills, make sure the lights are on at Commonwealth. Well, that's the city's job, and just don't suck.
Well, and it's kind of funny, right? Because now we've entered the land of who can we blame? Like now fans are asking, who can we blame? So Victor's gone now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Chris Jones is still there. People are still blaming Chris Jones. But then, well, who hired Chris Jones? It was the board. So now people are ripping on the board. And then with people ripping on the board, they're now asking, okay, well, is this board the problem? Do we need to get private ownership? Do we need a true owner that cares about this team? And like we said, right? Like, I mean, take a look at the Winnipeg Blue Bombers. 29 years without a Grey Cup. Those guys, they have been through quite literally years of turmoil, maintained the community ownership, and they stayed afloat perfectly fine.
Yes, they did. And I had a dear friend who's since passed, Jerry Maslowski, was with the Bombers and was revered there in that organization for what he did. And Jerry and I would talk when they were bad, and they had bad teams. They had a terrible old stadium, Canadian Stadium or Winnipeg Stadium. I mean, there wasn't much good about the Winnipeg Blue Bombers, for a lot of the time that I was in the league. But they had great players from time to time, and Mill Stiegel and Charles Robert. I mean, it doesn't matter. I mean, they had good players, and sometimes they had some kick-ass teams. But they were just kind of a downtrodden franchise that couldn't win the big games. They couldn't make it to the big games. And then there were a bunch of things happened, and it's never one thing. It's a culmination of a bunch of things that are smart. Some of it it's by chance and pure luck, and that happens in life and football. And then it just sort of builds to a place where, holy shit, all of this is working. Like, how did we get here? Well, you got a new stadium, and you got, you got Wade Miller, and you got Kyle Walters, and you got Mike O'Shea, and then, oh, wait a minute, you rescue Zach Collaros off the strap heap, and then you build out a really good team, and then you keep good people. And again, I come back to a consistency of leadership when you look at Winnipeg, which is what Edmonton had for so long. Like, when I was there from 98 to when I left 14 years later in 2012, I mean, you had Hugh Campbell. We had a board of directors. I mean, they changed out. I mean, the boards change. And you knew the individuals. It took a while before we had a woman on the board. That was great, Diane Brickner, but it was male dominated as it was at the time. And these were captains of industry in the city, and they would come through. You wouldn't see them very much. They would be at the games, but they weren't on the sidelines parading around. They weren't, but they would come in the office, the old building, down 112 there by the stadium, and they would just slide through. Like, the guy would pop in after a tough loss, and he'd drop in and see the staff and just say, "Hey, tough loss last night. How are you guys doing? Anything you need?" And then he'd be gone. And then he'd slide in. There was just sort of a quiet confidence. You knew that the board was there and very supportive, and I believe this one is too. I don't know the individuals other than Tom Richards on the board, that they're very skilled and they're supportive and they're trying to do the right things. But there was a consistency on the football side that was just, there was just a rhythm. Everything from, Dwayne Mandrusiak doing, and they've got like the support staff and all that stuff at the Elks. But there was just year after year, in my role and, Hugh Campbell's role, and then he transitioned to Rick Lawlisher, and it seems like the Elks just careen from crisis to crisis to crisis now.
Mm-hmm. No, it's something that was mentioned was ever since Ed Hervey was dismissed from the team, or sorry, we didn't pay him anyways. Len Rhodes, since those kind of days, right? Things have kind of been on a little bit of a down slope, and now we've kind of hit rock bottom.
Well,
So,
and if I could, I'll just jump in. When people have asked, like, where do you think it started going wrong? Well, I'm going to go a little further back. I'm going to go where I knew, and I left not that long after, was the Tillman hiring, and followed by the Rhodes hiring, followed by the Ray trade. Now, the Tillman hiring came, whatever, it was a year and a half to whatever. I can't recall the timeline necessarily. And then Lawlisher, stepped aside, and then Len Rhodes was hired, and then in December the Ricky Ray trade went down, and Len was a very inexperienced sports executive. He'd worked obviously in Reebok and whatever, but never done this before. And then Ricky was traded, and then I not that long after decided I was going to leave and go and do other things. That's when the club lost its way. And, they won in 2015 and largely, they had good talent and Ed could find good talent. And that's where I sort of start the process. And then, then that begat something else. And then there was, the Chris Presson hiring, who I met a couple of times, and I thought, based on his pedigree, thought, man, this guy might work. But was there a need to go outside and find an American for a Canadian Football League team?
No, that's the Preston hiring. That's a bit of a head scratcher for myself as well. I thought he was going to do very great results. Now looking back at it, it's kind of almost a little bit similar to the Victor Cui incident. Catherine, I'll let you go ahead for this next question. I'm going to quickly step away and get right back because we are going to run over on this one.
Oh, sorry, guys, and that's on me.
Okay. No, we are loving it. Catherine.
Yes, I'll definitely take this over. I know that recently on Twitter, a high-profile incident occurred involving a radio host, saying that it doesn't matter if his radio network doesn't have a regular female host. Partially due not to wanting to put an inexperienced female personality on the network. But what is your opinion on this? Do you really think that this mentality is the reason for females refraining from entering that line of work? Is there any implications?
Okay, let me answer. I want to draw on my experience both as a radio host, not just at TSN 1260, but elsewhere in my career in Vancouver, and then as a program director here in Edmonton on 630 CHED, finding and developing talent of either, a male, female, but it matters not. Or it's a difficult thing. There have been, and sports talk radio has been the domain of males for a very long time. But if we've learned anything over the last many years, we should have known it, earlier than that, was that women love sports. They care about sports. They're very, some of the most insightful people I've worked with in football have been women. I cite my friend Molly Campbell, who's with Calgary and works as the football operations, but she was my assistant for a time. Knew football in a way that, I'm like, wow, man, like you, but you're talking about broadcasting here. And I know all of the individuals involved in all of this. I think it was poorly answered. It does matter. I think those people are out there, and it's on us as a broadcast industry. I'm talking podcasting and traditional, radio, television, whatever, to create opportunities and an environment where women who want to do this, and there are lots. You look around both here in Canada, what people like Claire Hanna and Kenzie Lalonde. I mean, Cheryl Pounder. I mean, just like keep rolling. And I'm not talking just about sports anchors. I mean, they're very good as well. You know, like I think Lindsay Hamilton on TSN is a really good, like, you know, when I'm not talking about just doing sports desk, I'm talking about hosting Ottawa Senators and all the stuff they do, and Claire Hanna and the work she does, you know, and has been around the CFL for a long time. And Britt Dort, who's on TSN doing sidelines, is also very good. There are lots of, you know, and it's on us to again, as I said, create opportunities, create vehicles where they get the chance to do it, and then help people develop. Man, I mean, like, and I'm going to come off as the old guy, which I am, so I guess that's authentic. But man, we do not do enough to help our young talent. You know, we just don't. We've done away, and I'm going to default to radio. We've done away with overnight radio. We've done away with weekend radio. So where do these people get better at their craft?
Yes. No, I agree. And it really, you know, it's quite apparent too. And there's a lot of stories that are coming out based out of this of women that have been extremely interested in going into broadcasting and radio. And then suddenly they're faced with these limitations, I guess, that other people are putting on them, especially men, telling them that they are not able to master that craft just because of the simple fact that they are women. And then they leave their dreams behind and suddenly regret it, right? So there's a lot of stories of women saying that 3-5 years ago, I wanted to go, my dream was to go into radio broadcasting, and I stepped away, and I deeply regretted because of instances like
I'm the world, like when you, I'm just going to draw on my experience, and you know, I've been doing it a long time, you know, and I took a long break obviously to do other things, working for the Eskimos for 14 years, and so I got out of media, or at least that part of it. And when I came back and was working at TSN 1260, you know, the relationship, and when we got shut down, I was really moved for several days by the reaction and the visceral response from people at how important we had been in their lives, just on a daily basis. And I think I knew it on a level, but I didn't really truly get it. What we were doing meant something. Like we were a good part of their day, or we lightened the mood, or we, you know, whatever. You know, it didn't matter what it was, but it mattered to them. There's another side to all of that, and the relationship between a broadcaster and female, male, doesn't matter, is a darker side. And it can be very, very rough and an unkind world. I mean, lots of women do very well and survive in all of that, and they deal, you know, with all of that. But to come back to it, the question was not answered the way it probably should have been. I know it wasn't answered the way it should have been. It could have been. It needed to be more thoughtful. It needed to be more, the answer I'm talking about here, needed to be more understanding of the challenges of you know, those trying to get that opportunity. But it makes me sad knowing that the industry, you know, and again, I use radio, podcasting has opened up lots of opportunities for people, and that's awesome. But because of what's happened to radio, the chance for people to learn, get their chops, and get on and do a show, and get on and fail and succeed, and just those opportunities have been taken away. And that so begs the question, well, where do you get better? Where do you learn how to do this?
Well, and it's very good that you bring that up, because even within that response of that incident, right? The response went on to say, oh, well, so and so that was working with us went on to own a different business, or went on to do things not in radio. And then it kind of became like a condemnation on it. Whereas, over here at the Elks Herd, myself, Catherine, we work as a 1-2 punch. Not one of us, is more important than the other, but more importantly for even myself, having Catherine on, and I never think of the female part because I look at Catherine as my partner at the Elks Herd, so I never look at Catherine as being a female co-host or female co-host of color. I don't ever look at any of that. I just say Catherine's my co-host and her and I are going to do this. And truth be told, like for anybody watching the show right now, listening to the show later on, XYZ, Catherine does a lot of our graphics. Catherine does a lot of the back end of what we do at Shotgun Sports.
Heavy lifting, like the real heavy lifting. Let's call it what it is. Catherine, you're very talented. So
Thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and you nailed it, right? That's the hard stuff. Sometimes to be a representative and to be a salesman and to put on a face and whatever else. And what we talk about is very genuine. Everything that we tweet about and communicate with everybody and engage with everybody, it's all genuine, right? Maybe there's a day where you don't want to do it and you go ahead and do it. That would be where, maybe the face aspect comes into play. But in all reality, most businesses have a representative, just like the Edmonton Elks for the last while had Victor Cui as their main representative, right?
Yeah.
You have that face guy out there that does a lot of that stuff, but then in the background, Catherine has busted in night and day, and huge appreciation. But the big point of this is that I personally do not look at Catherine in that light, and there wasn't ever a second guess that she would be the co-host of the Elks Call.
Yeah, but I think it's also a matter of just the society that we live in. I mean, it's getting better. We are seeing definite improvements, but it's no different, let's say, in the military or in trades, right? And you can put that parallel with radio and broadcasting, especially in the world of sports as well. It is a very male-dominant kind of industry, and it's going to take some strides and some real change to kind of move away from that mentality. And thankfully, nowadays, you see tons of influencers. You see tons of female personalities that are going out there with podcasts and YouTube videos and social media that are showing how much sports can be part of females' lives as well. Right?
Well, you guys, I'm sure, are familiar with Mina Kimes, who is one of ESPN's signature on-air talents. Mina Kimes is Ivy League educated, and there may not be a smarter person talking NFL football than Mina Kimes. Never played the game, never coached, but again, I come back to obviously deeply knowledgeable, an incredible mind. And, I'm glad we're talking about this, but there's a part of me that goes, look, it's 2023. And it's bullshit that we've got to even have this conversation about, I come back to, can you play?
Yeah. There you go. Yeah.
Job done. Because I tell you what, guys, I've sat in studios. I did it at TSN 1260. I've done it elsewhere. And I look through the glass and I'll see a guy who, claims I know sports. I like sports. And I'll go, okay, well, we got a 4-hour show to do. Let's see what you got.
No,
can you dance?
Yeah,
that's exactly.
And I don't care what the gender is. Can you dance? Can you get it done? Can you generate discussion that's somewhat compelling or really compelling or whatever, some version thereof. And the fact that we have to have this conversation is frankly, it's tiresome, but I get why we're having it, and given what's happened here and the response to it, I understand why we're having it. But it just feels like, God, did we not move on from this? But I guess we didn't.
Yeah, no, very, 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 very good point, Dave. And I mean, we had to bring it up just because that's
no. And good. I'm glad you did. I'm just like, again, that's not because I'm past my bedtime. It's just like,
why do we have to bring it in?
Real quick in the live chat here, Stephen asked, have been going to games since 1969.
Yeah,
nice.
Wow.
These are desperate times and may need a desperate
logo. He'll know this logo. That's the original double E.
The beautiful.
Yeah, I love that logo.
Oh, it's so good. You saw our hat at Fan Day there. Yeah. And then Steve also said, question, is the cat an Elk supporter or here to represent the Ticats? Unfortunately, Elks, game day Luna, we throw the face paint on her, of course, all humane and all that stuff.
All humane. But I think it's time let's just move on to a really quick Edmonton sports update.
It's the Edmonton Sports Update. The Scarborough Shooting Stars are your 2023 CEBL champions. The Edmonton Stickers did not make it to championship weekend, falling to the Calgary Surge, who went on to lose in the CEBL final. The Edmonton Oilers are looking at two-time Oiler Sam Gagner for a professional tryout. This would be potentially his third time with the Edmonton Oilers. The Sherwood Park Crusaders and the Elks Herd have an exciting announcement coming soon. Stay tuned to our socials for that information. And the Edmonton Elks are visiting the Hamilton Tiger Cats tomorrow night at Tim Hortons Field. Kickoff is at 5:30 p.m. Mountain on TSN and 6:30 CHED. We're the Elks Herd. You're up to date.
There you go. He enjoys that segment.
My Matthew Alani.
Yes. He enjoys it a little too much.
And then immediately after that, just like good old TSN 1260, we also have a bit of a commercial break. So, Dave, I got a question for you. Yeah. You like throwbacks, right? You like a good throwback.
Sure, of course.
Did you know that RoyalRetros.com has CFL throwbacks?
Okay, now wait a minute. I think I might have, because Superfan Mike.
Yeah.
Yes.
Bought a 1960s. I saw him in a photo, and I went, "Holy shit!"
Yeah.
Are you serious? Where did you get that? And I worked on the 60s retro jersey, the 70 with Dwayne Mendrusiak, because he's always the guy but it led it. But I was head of marketing and communications, and so I got to work on those projects. So I got a real soft spot for that stuff. I'm a bit of a jersey, I don't buy stuff but I'm too old, man, for all that stuff. But anyhow, I have a real deep appreciation for jerseys, and I've heard about Royal Retros, and I've looked at their stuff. But then when Mike said, and I got this made, I'm like, what? It's dynamite. It's so cool.
Oh, those guys are extremely passionate for jerseys, and luckily for us, our admin down in Alabama ended up scoring a 10% off code using the code STAMPEDE over at RoyalRetros.com. And the reason for that is because the Birmingham Stallions ended up winning the 2023 USFL Championship. Giddy up. And remember, that code STAMPEDE is also good for the CFL throwbacks. So
you can use
go get your gear. Things Engraved is our first official merchandise partner. So thingsengraved.ca. We'll make sure that the link is in the description. But there's always a sale. Something is always on sale over at our Things Engraved catalog. And then soap. So let's talk about soap. Dave, do you use soap?
I guess I have used it. I'm familiar with it. I try to make it part of my daily routine. I'm actually, in fact, I'm such a big fan of soap. I'm glad you brought it up. I was hoping you would. I'm a bit of a shaving nerd. And I know you have a wonderful beard, and so I applaud you for that. I can't anymore, but I used to be able to, but I didn't. But I'm because I really cherish and value a good soap, and certainly a good shaving soap. So yeah, I'm all in on the soap thing.
Well, lather.com.
Oh,
they're Canadian.
Write that down. I'm going to write that down.
Lather, it's lather, so it's LATHR. No E, so it's lather without the E. And we get 15% off over at lather.com. So Shotgun Sports 15 is your code for lather.com. Go get yourself some cheap Canadian soap. I believe Ontario. I want to say Sauga City.
Locally made?
Not quite Edmonton, but nationally
made. Canadian product.
They're
support.
bad. They're nationwide. No, I mean bad meaning good. I apologize, Lather.
All right, guys. So our last segment for tonight. This has been awesome, by the way, Dave. We are loving the
I've
conversation.
enjoyed this a lot.
Oh, this is beautiful, man. Big fan of yours. Real quick before we dive into this, I've listened to you on TSN 1260. We've done our trivia Thursdays. We've opened up the books that we're using for reference because Catherine, here's testament to Catherine. Catherine would go down to the public library, go to the archives, go get any double E books that she could, and we'd open them up. Was it the Dan Kepley? Which one was it?
Yeah, I think so. Yes.
We reopened it up and oh no, it was the Decade of Excellence, maybe.
Just
Terry Jones' first book. Yeah.
whatever I can find.
And your name's in there, right? In one of these books, we open it up, and your
Yeah.
name is in there. Dave Jamieson, director of media.
That's me. I'm the guy. Yeah.
Beautiful. So we've been extremely excited, and this is the segment we've been most excited about. This is the more you didn't know. So we're gonna ask you a couple questions here, Dave.
Yep.
The first one, you have been on every side of the fence when it comes to the Edmonton Eskimos, the Edmonton Elks, the double E's. Mm-hmm. Can you please give us your double E timeline?
Oh, like my personal?
Well, yeah, personal and including your career, but as long as you've been involved with the green and gold.
Were you a big fan before you started working for the double?
Okay, well, I can do this fairly quickly. So I started interacting with the club when I was the program director of 630 Ched, right? So when was that? 95, 94, anyhow, 94. And so I was starting, we carried the game. So I was working with Alan Watt, and I'm the running Ched, or at least the program director of Ched. And so I was interacting with the team, and, so I had a relationship. 1998, I get hired to be the director of communications for the Edmonton Eskimos. My first day on the job, we signed David Archer. And so I got to write a press release, and I'd never written a press release. And I've read lots of them, and I've been around it, but I hadn't done one. And, I'm banging it out and, trying to do this thing. And David Archer is coming in, and we announced this signing, and we're all very excited. And David was a great guy, and I love David Archer. And I know lots of people like, oh God, David Archer. He was an awesome guy. He was so good to me in my first year doing this job. And then jump ahead, hire Don Matthews. One more timeline, one more thing. In 98, David Archer got thrown out of a game at Commonwealth Stadium because he threw Glenn Rogers Jr. over the timers table.
I've heard about that.
Thrown out of the game, and I'm walking off with David. I'm like, holy shit, our quarterback got thrown out of the game. Fans are booing. Well, David gave the finger to the knothole gang because somebody was yelling at him like it was just a mess. Anyhow, I go in the dressing room with him, and I'm like, wow, I'm sort of, I don't know what to do. Kind of, do you want to hide, or do you want me to tell the media you're not available? He goes, no, here's what I want you to do. I want you to open the door when the coach says it's, we're going to open the door. And I want you to tell him, go right to me. And I looked at him and I went, holy shit, I just got sort of, that's a professional.
Yeah.
And he stood there and took the questions and was a pro. Skip forward, hired Don Matthews, 1999. That was a wild experience. I used to wait. Don would do a coach's show on Ched, and he would say, and it was like 8 at night, the coach's show, Monday night or something, I think it was. And Don, let's just say Don, may rest in peace, enjoyed life. And I would have to call him to wake him up for the show. Some nights it was harder to find him than others, but we got him to the phone on some nights, and sometimes to get him there in person. Anyhow, and I had a lot of experiences with Don through 2 years, and a lot of them good, and I learned a lot, and it was wild working with the Don. I mean, it was quite something. And then it got calmer times with Tom. And I'm going off the coaches because that's the easiest way to kind of move along the timeline. And Don got fired 2 days before the first preseason game in 2021, which was a wild experience because I was told, and I know I'm not doing the timeline fast, but I have to tell this story because we had fan day. In 2021, you may remember, I don't know how old you are, we had to do our training camp out in St. Albert. We were at the Army base and the field was unplayable. And so we had to go to the rugby club in St. Albert and do our sessions, back to backs, and but we were going to do fan day at the Army base. And Hugh Campbell pulled me aside and he said, I need to talk to you. Follow me. And we went over this berm and the team is practicing and Don is out on the field. And Hugh says, well, you're one of 3 people that know this. And my wife is the other one. And I'm the other one. I said, okay, that's you, your wife, and me, right? I got it right? He goes, yeah. He said, we're firing the coach. And I said, our coach, like him, Don Matthews, over my shoulder. He said, yeah. I'm like, holy shit, our media guide goes to print. This is Sunday. It's like Monday morning. I'm like, media guys, PR guys worry about stuff like the media guide. And I'm like, damn it. Okay. And he goes, you can't tell a soul. I went, no shit. So I go back and I got to walk around with this knowledge that the guy I'm looking at and talking to is getting fired. So the next day we're at practice at St. Albert, the rugby club, and we get through the 2 morning sessions. And so it's around lunch hour because we'd start like at 9 a.m. and just plow through. It was long days. And I'm like, okay, when is this going to go down? Like, what's happening here? And Hugh walks Don off the field and they're walking towards the parking lot where their cars are. And what we would do is we'd get on a bus from the rugby club, go back to the Army base, change, shower, and then we would go in the commissary, the military commissary, with all the officers. Like everyone's around and there's guys in fatigues and everything. And there we were eating our lunch. So I watch Hugh take Don off to the side and he fires him like right there. And I'm like, holy shit, this is going to be something. So I take off and, we're talking 2001 here, guys. We got flip phones. We're not super connected. And we're going to have a news conference like 2 hours later. So I got to phone all the reporters and we're not texting people. It's like you got to get and dial global. Hello, CTV. Hello. Like we're having a news conference. We got to go here. And that was for me sort of my big story that I was part of, and you skip forward through the timeline and, we're coming up on Labor Day and we're this year, as with the Terry Vaughan Wall of Honor, they're going to be celebrating the 20th anniversary of the 2003 Grey Cup, right? And that's going to be honored. And so today I did an interview around the brawl in 2003, the Labor Day brawl, the famous brawl. And so, I go 2001, firing of Don, all that happened. 2002, we hosted a Grey Cup and lost. And there's a story there around that because, they sat Winston October, which was a mistake because we didn't have a kick returner. John Avery then blew his hamstring or whatever the hell it was. And he came out of the half. And so we lost him. And I mean, it was a mess. We should have won. We were the better team, shitty field. That was disappointing. And then we win in 2003. And 2003 was an amazing year because we had the brawl and we had the blackout early in the season in Toronto where we were stuck in Eastern Canada. So I look at 2003 as kind of really a pivotal year, because it was a brilliant team and we won the brawl and all of what happened there, and the blackout, where we went down to Toronto to play and the whole Eastern Seaboard had what they call a brownout, where the electrical grid just shut down. So we were this team stuck we became a national story. It was like, oh, look, the Edmonton Eskimos, they can't go home. They're stuck in Toronto. And there's a bunch of great stories, man. I wish, I know at least TSN has done a short doc on it, like just a short feature. But there's so many images I have of '03 and the blackout and being in Toronto. But the one that really sticks out of the many was the commissioner, Tom Wright, going to his 3 personal bank accounts in Toronto, taking out all of the money, coming to our team hotel, and coming up to a room and meeting with Tom Higgins, our head coach, me, Dwayne Mandrusiak, and the 4 of us sitting in a hotel room counting out hundreds for the per diems and just going, okay, Mike Pringle gets 500. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Mike Pringle, right? Isn't it on the envelope?
Oh
Next.
my goodness.
Wild.
And Ed Hervey. 1, 2, 3, 4. Like
Oh,
all of the, I mean, we're stuck in a gorgeous hotel, but we're stuck in a hotel. We're out of money because guys go on the road and you get a per diem. Well, we got through, we were supposed to play on a Friday, I think at Skydome, and then fly home the next day. Well, guys are out of money. So we get to the stadium and it's blacked out. Like Toronto is in darkness. So we're not playing a football game, although they debated it. But sitting there with the commissioner of the CFL with brown paper bags of money, just counting this up and then going and finding guys, like, because people were scattering. We had nowhere to practice. We were driving around the city. I mean, people found us practice. We practiced at the Argos facility, but, it was a national story because there were the Edmonton Eskimos and they were orphans. So the '03 season, like your timeline, and I know, some seasons kind of blended into the next one, but I look at the timeline, and then there was also the moment where, at the time, I should say, the incident where there was it was very serious. Someone was killed, where a lot of the guys were staying down at a place near what now Remax Field. And there was a bar called Cliff Clavin's in this, now I think it's a condo unit, but anyway, it was an apartment complex then. A lot of guys stayed there, and it was down in the River Valley. And I got a call on a Sunday night from Rick Campbell, one of our assistants, and he goes, "You better get downtown because we're hearing that there's been an incident at this place, this in a tall tower." And what had happened was there had been an explosion, like on the 5th or 6th floor, I think. And there was someone, I believe, killed. And then a woman had to jump. And she jumped into the waiting arms of 6 Eskimo players. And they caught her, right? They were out there and they're like, she's like, "I'm going to jump." And they're like, "Well, we're going to catch you." And this story then blew up. And this is, we're talking, in the 2000s here, in the early 2000s. And having, it was Bruce Beaton and Sheldon Benoit and Winston October and Ron Williams and Raheem Abdullah. And they caught this woman and saved her from this fire and explosion. And we ended up doing a thing on CNN with Connie Chung back in the day. And that's another highlight of the timeline. Like, it was another, holy shit, I can't believe I'm involved. Like, we're involved in this moment, right? So we used to laugh. Like, big news seemed to follow us, from coaching firings and the blackout and the thing on CNN and the building and the explosion and it was kind of funny. We were a good football team, very good football team, but we also had these weird things around us. We had a couple of stabbings where some of our players had incidents off the field. I went to court with Alfred Payton on his stuff, and I used to have to take him to the lawyer because Hugh Campbell said, "I want to make sure you take Alfred Payton to his lawyer's appointments." And I said, "Okay." And so we would go to practice, and I would wait for Alfred to shower. And Swack was amazing, brilliant player. And he'd been involved in an incident. Actually, I'll take you back to '02 Grey Cup. We're on the field practicing and getting ready for Grey Cup, and media, it's huge, national media, everyone's there. It's packed. We're at Clark Stadium, and my phone rings, and it's, "Hey, good morning, Mr. Jamieson. It's so and so from Edmonton Police Service." And I'm like, "Oh, good morning." And he said, hope I haven't caught you at a bad time. I said, well, we're just, we're practicing and we're just getting ready to do some media stuff. And he said, oh, well, I'm sorry to trouble you. I know it's a big week and we're all excited for the Eskimos. I said, well, thank you, Constable, or whatever his rank was. He said, but listen, we got a problem. I said, okay, well, how can I help you? And he goes, well, one of your players appeared in court this morning. And I said, sorry, I'm one of our players, like an Eskimo. He said, yes. Ep8 appeared before the court this morning, before the judge, early today, like whenever the court opens up. I mean, we were on the field. I forget what it was, but Mr. Payton was there and he appeared. And he represented himself. And I'm like, represented himself?
No.
All right. Do tell me more. And he said, well, he appeared and I just want you to be aware and we filled me in. And so I'm like, holy shit, this is great. We're playing Grey Cup on Sunday. This is like Wednesday or what, huh? How did I not know that we had a player going to court?
Oh.
So I run out to the middle of the field and Tom Higgins is about to kind of break down the team. I said, Tom, we got a problem here. Like number 56 has been in court this morning. Were you aware? And he's like, well, I knew Alfred had an issue. Well, we got to know more than he had an issue here because we're about to put Alfred up on the podium to do all the interviews. Like, we're not going there because there are people who have been in the courthouse who, they got court reporters who would phone a sports reporter who would say, hey, listen, there's an Eskimo who's just been in court this morning on an assault charge. You might want to ask them about it. And so we're like, no. I think Alfred needs to go in for treatment. He's still going to go on the podium. Anyhow, we get through. We played the game, lose the game, and Alfred leaves town quickly, and that was a kind of a wild ride. And then comes back to town for 03, gets hurt early in that season, but has to then deal with the fallout from being found guilty because he showed up in court without a lawyer, and the judge said, "Oh, Mr. Payton," and read him the details of the infraction and the charges. And Alfred thought, because he's an American and doesn't know the Canadian legal system, nor should he just kind of thought, and the judge said, "Well, go Eskimos, good luck on Sunday." And he thought, "Well, I guess I'm good to go."
Oh no!
Oh no!
And so he left, went back home to Louisiana in the off season, and thought, "Well, I'm solid." Returned for training camp in 03, and they went, "Not solid, dude. We got a problem here. We got to deal with this." So I had to end up going to court to do all his legal visit. Lawyer. We had to try and undo the process based on the fact that Alfred didn't know, the severity of what was happening.
Oh, no.
And it was I'm not going to minimize, but it was a fairly minor infraction. But someone, said, "Oh, that guy's an Eskimo," and press charges and whatever else. Mm-hmm. Anyhow, that was on my timeline. I mean, there's being around Grey Cup winners in 03 and 05, but that story, is another one I always go, "Oh, I can't believe I was part of that." And Alfred and I used to drive him to the lawyer, and we would sit, and I would take notes, and then I'd take him back home, and then I would sit with him in the courthouse, and went to court with him, and was with him through it all. And, because it was part of my job, but also it was, I wanted to be there for a guy who was a teammate. I'm not, what I mean? Like he was one of us.
Yeah.
So you're not going alone in this.
Oh God, that's amazing.
Yeah.
That is amazing.
What a job.
Yeah.
What a job.
Yeah, it was certainly a weird job for sure.
I can tell you right now, I mean, we're gonna rip through our last questions. Dave, we're gonna have you back on because we're gonna need to have another great combo with you.
These stories.
Happy to do it.
This is so good, man. This is so good. Catherine.
Yeah. So taking it away a little bit from the Edmonton Elks and everything, we know of one of your projects, which is Cancer in the Room. So what can you tell us about that, and what other projects or collaborations or prospects do you have
Yeah, for employment, I'm guessing you're meaning.
I
Yeah,
didn't want to go there.
I got it in there. I got it in there. And
well,
on this,
I always tell people now, if I am driving you in a limousine to the airport, just be generous with your tip. I don't know. To answer the last question first, I don't know what prospects are. I mean, I'm just taking a bit of time. The last two, Cancer in the Room is a project of some great passion, and with my friend Bryn Griffiths, who is a fellow cancer patient survivor. And Bryn and I have known each other a very long time. And Bryn, we came together when I got sick, and I was diagnosed with head and neck cancer in 2021 in June. June 5th, and then I had my surgery, and then I had radiation, head and neck radiation in September of 2021. But Bryn was really supportive because he'd gone through a different kind of cancer. And so we ended up, when I was able to kind of come through it and we were able to get together, we thought there's something here. Maybe we can combine, because we knew enough people in sports had gone through cancer of some description, would have great stories to tell. And could we combine, individual stories that were inspirational, and also, on the back end, get to some sports and we've had Ron Rivera, the head coach of the Washington Commanders. We have Buck Martinez, the voice of the Blue Jays, and Jamie Campbell, who's an sports anchor. Well, he's host of Blue Jays baseball on Sportsnet, and some other folks to talk about their journey with cancer and also their life in sports, be they an athlete, an executive, a coach, whatever, it doesn't matter. And Craig McTavish was on the show. And we, it was, we didn't get into it to make money or really other than to be able to tell some stories, because there is a real, when you have cancer and go through it, there is a real community. You find that people you didn't know want to help, they want to listen, they want to be there. And in many cases, not everybody, a lot of people, if they go through it and they come out of it, and they want to get on with their lives and not look back, but a lot of people are willing to share. And that sharing is valuable. And so that's the essence of what Cancer in the Room is.
Well, and it's absolutely amazing that you've created that space, right?
Mm-hmm.
Kind of like how we tried to create some form of space here with the Elks Herd. You having Cancer in the Room with Bryn, and then, like you said, right? People kind of feel alone when they're going through that battle, or when they're talking to people, they don't have somebody to talk to about it. Mm-hmm. So you coming in with Cancer in the Room, and then Buck Martinez, that episode was great. Ron Rivera, that episode, you and I talked about it, I believe. Absolutely amazing.
Yes. Ron Rivera was, I have career highlights in broadcasting and things that I've done and people I've talked to that I just go, wow, I can't believe that I was able to do that and be part of that. But the Ron Rivera interview is going to be something that sticks with me a long time. And I know Bryn feels the same way because, first of all, you don't get an NFL coach, and you certainly don't for a podcast in Edmonton. No. Ron Rivera came off the field from an OTA to do that. And he was exceptionally generous with his time. He was welcoming. He was, you could not ask for, and I've never met the man. I mean, I'm like most other people. I've only seen him on sidelines and in interviews, and you don't know a person. But I'm telling you, that was a man that was entirely impressive. Yeah, it was just, we left and we went ended and we just went, holy, wow, that was something.
No, and that's, like you said, right? Especially you having a CFL background, NFL coach, coming off the field. Yeah. Definitely going to have that conversation with you. And we recommend that everybody goes and checks out that episode.
Thank you.
Go ahead and plug the source. Should be your podcast streams there.
Yes, absolutely. Go wherever you, as Bryn always likes to say, your ear candy, and you can find cancer in the room. And we hope you enjoyed. We kind of did a summer hiatus because we had a bunch of stuff to do, and Bryn's got other projects he's working on, and we're going to fire it up here in short order. And to answer the back end of your thing, I don't know what next steps are going to be. Because I've kind of arrived at a place in life with my career and life where I want to take time and whatever is going to come next. I like to be doing good work with good people, and I know that sounds very generic and kind of sappy, but is it some work that I've done 10 years, more than 10 years now, of work in the not-for-profit and charitable realm. I'm chair of the Brain Care Center board of directors and have been for 5 years. And prior to that, I was with Capital Care Foundation, all of this volunteer. And I find that work very satisfying in the not-for-profit sector and around, either healthcare or however you want to phrase it, the elderly. So I don't know. I know I should probably be more focused on that, but I just don't know yet what the next steps are going to be. But I'm excited to go, and my health is a lot better. Feel a lot better today than I did, coming back when I did 10 months after the surgery and the radiation. Everything was physically demanding and mentally demanding, and getting back to TSN 1260 was a goal. I set some goals when I got sick. One of them was to return to work. Well, the first one was to survive. I thought was probably a good place to start. Like, hey, I want you to try living, and we got that. Check that box. And then the other was to get working again. And that was not a given because I lost my voice for several weeks because of the radiation, and there was a real concern. I had a real concern, like, what am I going to do now? If I can't do that, what do I do? Anyhow, we did it, and then the station, we know how it ended, and then you go, okay, well, but what are you going to do now to both pay for life and then also to fill your time and do things? So I'm working on that. That's long-winded way of saying I don't know.
Well, we'll keep an eye.
Yeah, thank you.
Successful.
Well, and before our outro here, I can tell you, Dave, that I was watching your resurgence. I was waiting for you to come back to 1260. I remember the day you came back to 1260. Your story of resilience is inspirational and empowering, and just like Cancer in the Room, right? These stories and you being here to tell it, and you being the example of, yes, you can make it through most bad things in life. You can make it through it, but you can also be successful while you do it. And that's a major reason as to why we wanted to talk to you as well, is because you have that resilience behind you that, let's say our double E question, we usually ask the lifelong fan question, what keeps you going? We know we're going to ask that on another episode with you, right? But we also know that you're a loyal, straight up, resilient guy. So
thank you.
We can kind of assume that question.
Resilience is a quality I didn't know I had until I needed it. And I needed a lot of it, and I had a lot of help, from my three children, Lindsay, Abby, and Danny, and my dear friend Holly, who have been here and helped me along, and my circle of friends and my football community. It's funny, the notes I got after people learned that I was ill, from former players I'd worked with. One of the things I tried to do when I was very clear that I was friendly, and I was served the needs of coaches and players, but I never assumed or presumed that the relationship was more than what it was. Right. But and by that I mean I didn't go out for dinner with guys. I left them their space. I didn't, but they knew, and I hope they knew through my actions, that I was there for them. Whether it was Alfred Payton in court or going to see Adam Braidwood, when he was in court and making his appearance, that he could look out as he did. I don't know if he saw me, but it was important to me that because they're teammates. And that thing matters to me, even though I clearly am not a player, thank God. And that, those sorts of things. So, when you say resilience, and I thank you for that, you never know how much you got until you need it. And humans are tested every day for a variety of reasons. And I was, and still am. I mean, I've still got lots of issues I got to deal with, and probably will until, I'm not doing this living. But our ability to find a way is pretty remarkable. I just didn't know I had all of, some of that, let's say.
No, we
can definitely learn a lot from people like you, Dave. So,
yeah, and we mean it from the bottom of our hearts. I mean, Edmonton, city of Edmonton, the country of Canada, North America, the world. It's a way better place with Dave Jamieson on it. And I mean, you've brightened up my days when I've had shitty days, and you don't even know it. So
when TSN 1260 went down, this guy shed a tear.
Yeah, and part of that too, right?
Thank you. That means a lot. That means that. Again, back to what I said earlier about the depth of the relationship with, and I know you guys, but there's lots of people you don't, and I think that's probably why I fell in love with radio when I was a little kid, and I listening in my my bed and to broadcast out of Los Angeles and places like that. Is you sort of get pulled into a world that you feel part of, but yet you don't really know. And so the relationships are interesting, and they're deeper than you think they could be or should be. And just what you guys are saying about what happened with the radio station and what the impact it had on your life. That's a pretty dynamic thing. It really is.
No, it is, and just as you said, you don't really you don't get that until it's done.
Yeah.
Especially with your job, right? Mm-hmm. Same deal for us. We don't really get to show you that appreciation that much, or show you that until once again it's done.
Yeah.
So, ladies and gentlemen, we ran a full 55 minutes over today. This is beautiful. This is beautiful because that's how you know it was a good show.
Yes.
So.
You know what? I'm glad. Well, thank you. I hope it works for you guys and for the people watching and all that. But I'm like, and people who worked with me know that I was just the worst at watching the clock. And my producer Matthew Wannick would be like, "Wow, you really, like I said, you had a 15-minute segment. You got out at 15." I said, "Yes," because that's what you told me to do. And so I have violated my own rules here. So I apologize for going on and riffing too long, but
that's okay, because we violated our own rules as well. We try to keep it to an hour, and we knew it was going to go over. This is
good conversations.
This is amazing, Dave. This is
thank you. So I appreciate the platform, and you guys, let it breathe, and I love that. And if I were a musician, God, I wish I was. Someone would write a review saying self-indulgent and went on too long. I get that, and I will understand it, but I know we're here to tell stories and share stuff, and so it was good for me as well.
Hey, we will definitely have you on as long as you're down, Dave.
I'm down.
And here, just before we go, everybody's absolutely loving these stories as well. We have Steve saying, "Thank you, Dave, for attending and providing some great comments and insight."
I got you, Steve.
And also, we have another comment just saying they love these stories. Jared?
Yeah, Byron.
It was funny because I did a show for the last year with Low Tide, who's, as he reminds me all the time, I'm an author, and I go, "Yes." And where you have a book, would you like to plug it? And he'd say, "You got to write a book." I said, "Al, I don't have your skill. I'm not strong enough with the narrative, but I have moments. I can tell a story, and I can tell, but a book is a lofty thing, and it requires great skill, most of which I don't have, but I can tell you anecdotes, and anecdotes might lend themselves to maybe like a really cool article.
Well, now
I don't know
you know what? All these stories that we just heard,
They can go
they
in a
would,
book.
yeah, they would make a
The book!
fantastic book.
The book. You
I'm
can't
just
forget about the
saying.
book. Dave Jamieson needs his book. Yes.
But you can write another book now with all of these anecdotes and
Oh,
I
stories.
just like the idea of a book, but then having to do the appearances
Yes,
at
yes.
the store and chasing people around to chapters, asking them if they want to buy the book. I'd love that stuff.
Oh, so good, so good. What was
Yeah.
the place that he was doing his signings at?
That was Audrey's.
Audrey's, yes,
Oh,
Audrey's.
yes,
You gotta go to
And
Audrey's.
and he would be, and I wasn't there, but I have friends who went, and they said he was awesome, and he read from it, and I always love the idea of authors reading from their books. It's just so good. It's just awesome. I love all of it.
Oh, so good.
Maybe we'll see another one here coming up.
Well, yeah, well, no, we need to see one from Dave Jamieson.
Yes.
Not
Yeah,
Loki.
yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, we'd like to thank our live chat viewers tonight for getting in the chat, blowing it up. We had quite a few in there, so thank you for listening. Most importantly, Dave Jamieson,
Thank you so much.
thank you so much for this awesome evening, man.
Thank you. Appreciate you were great company, and to everyone watching and listening, and taking this in. You will do it again, and let's. The Elks need us, right? They need the vibes, they need the support. And I'm not here to say you got to go. I mean, you'll go if you want to go. But we want better times ahead for the franchise, and I'm holding up my double E, and so I still believe, and I still want the best for them, and I know you guys do too.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, no, we're all in the same common goal here. You're taking care of the alumni. We're trying to be here for the fans, and in turn, we're all part of the same community. So,
yes.
Dave, how about we have this kind of conversation after a couple home wins?
Let's do that. That sounds fun.
Let's do this again, guys.
Thank you so
Everybody, thank you so much for joining the herd on the Elks Call today. My name is Scout, aka the rep from Section X.
And I'm Catherine, aka Dave.
And I'm Dave Jamieson. Yeah.
And that is Dave Jamieson. Hey guys, this was another lovely episode of the Elks Call. We'll chat you all later. Have a good one, everybody. Go out.
Good night, everybody.
Cheers.